the premise of an escape room is simple. You're locked in a room for a set amount of time, and you have a series of puzzles you have to solve that eventually are the means to your escape. But if that timer runs out, normally somebody comes out and just sort of gives you a, well, you tried, and then unlocks the door and lets you out of the room. But what if instead the timer was the puzzle you had to solve, and when that timer runs out, you start back over and have to do the whole thing over and over and over and over again? We're talking about 12 minutes. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the 3VO podcast, where we're all on the same team. I'm your host for this episode, Jordan.
And I'm your other host, Brendan.
And if you're new to this show, well, then we are just two big old nerds that just absolutely love video games so much that we just have to yell about it. So if you have that much enthusiasm for video games like us, this is definitely the place for you. Today we'll be talking about the game 12 Minutes, but before we get into all of that, Brendan, how are you?
I'm great. I'm riding high off of finishing Tunic on stream.
I was going to say congrats on beating Tunic on stream.
Yes,
it's our first completed game on stream.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Awesome.
Tunic was really, really fun. I think it would make a great episode for the podcast. I'd be happy to talk about it at length. But I mean, just for right now, like it was a really, really great play. Lots of good puzzles. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed every step of the way. A game about secrets is a really cool, kind of interesting thing that's not been done a whole lot, I would say.
I was watching your streams of you playing it, mm-hmm. and it was really interesting to see just like, to the point of which that it was like, what you're doing is putting together the player's handbook for the game, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
Which was super fascinating, and
mm-hmm.
I was just like, so it's... The point of the game is to learn how to play the game.
Yes.
And then by the time you put it all together at the end, that's how you beat the game. Is like,
right.
You go, okay, this is how it's done.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But even then, even like looking at the booklet you were putting together in the game, it was like, even that was in a coded language that you had to like decipher and determine and whatnot.
Yeah, largely. Which, I mean, was kind of frustrating, but also kind of cool, because like, that doesn't happen, you know?
No. Well, I imagine that style of design kind of like begs for a community, mm-hmm. and to establish a community of like people mm-hmm. who are like trying to put the pieces together. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, it's been like well broken now, you know, and now that it's been out for a while.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's a game that gives you literally everything from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Everything that you acquire as far as like powers or like abilities isn't really anything that you get. It's just that you learn how to do them, you know?
Right.
It's all button inputs or pressing this button for a length of time or doing this input in this area, you know, things like that. You know? So it's cool that the game doesn't like give you abilities like a traditional like Zelda-like title would.
Right.
It gives you everything at the beginning.
Yeah.
And if you figure it out, great. And if not, then you got to keep, trying things out. It's very interesting.
It kind of reminds me of like really old school gaming, because it's like when you think about it, like when you start like the original Super Mario's for the NES or mm-hmm. the Zelda for the NES, mm-hmm. it just kind of starts up and says, okay, go. Yeah. Like, everything, all the mechanics are there for you. It doesn't, mm-hmm. like, there's no tutorial process or, like, mm-hmm. here's how you use this or use that. It's just like, mm-hmm. no, go play. Like, mm-hmm. go do it.
Right, absolutely.
Which, as a gamer, is kind of refreshing, because, like, mm-hmm. while I suck at video games for the most part, and need my handheld, it is kind of cool to see, like, I don't know if it's intentional, but what seems like a throwback to, like, no, game starts... Figure it out. Like,
yeah,
just
go with you. Yeah, exactly. It definitely has that kind of like throwback feel. I would definitely say it reminisces of like Link's Awakening. A lot. But in contrast to those kinds of games, there's nothing that you like unlock throughout the game. There's some like there's like some like weapons and things that you get throughout the game, but largely they're optional.
Right.
And it's not like you have to get this. The ice dagger, for example. You don't have to get the ice dagger to progress. You can totally forget it.
Yeah, just you don't need it, so you can just...
Right, anything that's needed to get through the game, you have from the beginning, like the prayer ability or being able to input the Holy Cross, things like that, all available at the beginning of the game.
Right.
So it's going to be really cool to go back and play through it again, knowing everything that I know now
I often find that in general with video games that it's like, it's the first playthrough is always great, but it's like second, third, fourth time through when you're like, okay, now I know what the game wants me to do, like, and I get the mechanics of it a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, that's when it's fun to go back and be like, I got this now, let's go.
Absolutely. Other than that, though, I picked Hades up again, which is great fun. I like a roguelite, so been playing some Hades.
I downloaded it, by the way.
Oh yeah, great.
I gotta download it because you guys have been talking about it a lot, so I was like, I'm gonna give that a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody, friend of the podcast, wants us to play it quite a lot.
He has mentioned it almost every time in chat.
So I think we should. It's good fun. I think you'll like it. Okay. The writing is really good.
I've heard a few other things I follow have said like almost nothing but good things about it too. So I'm like, okay. If all my friends like it and people I follow like it, then I'll give it a shot and check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What have you been up to though?
I want to mention something out the gate here. This isn't a soapbox thing or like this is a certain thing. Just something I experienced today that I want to bring up. That's sort of akin to my if you ever rolled a nat one in real life discussion, something like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment where it's like without necessarily saying anything or even like having direct contact? Have you ever had like a moment with a complete stranger where you're both on the same page about something that's happening around you?
Oh yeah.
Like in the airport, you hear like flight blah blah blah, and you look over at some guy and he's like, oh, and you're like, oh, right, like that kind of shit.
Yeah.
I had that at a stoplight on the way here.
Okay.
So pulled up to the red and just stopped and stopped and was chilling for a second, and there was somebody crossing the street at the crosswalk, and they were. I don't want to like make fun of somebody because I don't know what was going on with them, but like they just had a walk that I don't normally see unless you're on a hike and you're going down a steep hill. Like, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's like you have to kind of like drop in your knees a little bit and like kind of do like a little like shuffle walk as you go down.
Yeah.
They were doing that, but just crossing the street on like a flat plane.
Okay.
So it caught my eye and I was watching them and I had that moment where I was like, you're the asshole just staring at somebody who you don't know what their deal is. You don't know why they're walking like this. You're just watching them cross the street. But then I looked across at the other side of the street, and there was a dude on a motorcycle, full helmet and everything. And I just saw him doing the same thing, just tracking this guy going across the street. And I just like, we didn't have the connection, but I was like, oh good, I'm not the only asshole in the stoplight right now.
That's nice. So you and a stranger made fun of in your heads.
I didn't say anything mean in my head. It was more just kind of like, what is going on? Is everything cool? Like, you good? Like
he's practicing for the organization of Silly Walks.
Oh, of course. Wow. I'm the old guy on this podcast, and that's a dated reference.
I know.
Good Lord.
That's all I could think of.
It's good, though. Other than that, back to more focused topics for the podcast. Yes. Well, first of all, I don't know if you saw it, but I got a new necklace that came in.
Ooh, it's a fucking. Can you see this on camera?
I doubt you could see it.
Zoom in.
I doubt you could see it, but yeah, it's
a mass relay.
It's a Mass Effect relay. Yeah, so very happy with that. Got another necklace also as well, but it's just like a base like outline of like a dragon like symbol for our D&D campaign for my Dragonborn that I got. Cool. In video game related news for myself, beat Resident Evil Village finally, which is cool. Had to get back into it. Got back into it just because I was just like, because I picked up Tiny Tina's Wonderland, and I was just like, I've been ignoring fucking Resident Evil Village for so long because of one section that I'm scared of. Get back into it. Turned out that section was way more horrifying than I thought it was going to be. Way worse. Way worse. Not going to tell you because we are playing it at some point. So I'm not going to tell you what it was.
Is it the part where the lady turns into not a lady? Because I know about that.
No, that part I expected because Resident Evil. Like with the... With the bosses that at first appear to you as, like, humans, there's always a section where they turn into, like, a big creepy monster thing. So I was like, knew that was probably going to happen. Biggest disappointment there, though, was just that, like, that whole section with her in the castle is just, like, kind of the intro level of the game. Oh. So it's like, yeah, you're there for, like, well, depending how much running around you do, like, maybe 2 hours of the game. But the game can be short. Like, I've done 2 run-throughs now of it, and my last run I burned through it in like 6 hours or something like that. Oh, okay. I'm doing New Game Plus, so I got to keep all my weapons and da-da-da. So it was just like, where before it was like, oh god, scavenging for weapons, trying to be careful about my ammo and whatnot. This time I was just blasting through the areas like it was nothing. But as far as like overall Resident Evil game experience goes, I like this more than Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Biohazard, I think as it was called.
This is what you get. Sometimes you record in your
Sometimes
apartment,
there's just children screaming outside for
just...
no reason. And there's nothing we could do about that, guy. Sorry.
And you just get to see that little glimpse into our lives.
Get to hear the children screaming. We're assuming they're okay. Like it sounded like playful screaming, but just like especially compared to the last one, like everything kind of seemed to be more like on a theme. At least like the theme was more clear. Where like in the last one, it started off in like a sort of like creepy Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe with like a family that kidnaps you and they're infected obviously, but like it's just like a very weird vibe that way. And then just like mold monsters just kind of show up out of nowhere as like random enemy encounters. You're like, okay, that doesn't track. Whereas with this, they do still have that, but it's like you have the Dimitrescu's in their castle that are like vampire-esque. You've got a chick with like a creepy doll that she controls through the parasites. And then some of the random encounters are sort of like generic zombie looking things or they're lichens of some kind. So it's like, and the whole thing is like an old school retelling of like fairy tale vibes to
lichens,
it. So.
As in lycanthropes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Like, so
not like the plant.
No. Sorry. Yes, sorry. No, like lycanthropes. Like,
I don't know a thing about Resident Evil, so I was like, there's plant monsters?
Oh, well, there are though, but like not in this one, but there are. Well, there's a whole mold thing, but yeah, it's
yeah.
I can do an episode where I break down the entire timeline of Resident Evil, like we did with Zelda at some point.
I wish you wouldn't.
Listen, you're gonna play the Resident Evil games, or at the very least, we're gonna play Resident Evil on stream, and you're gonna be there for it.
For sure,
it's gonna happen. It's going to happen at some point. But yeah, just overall a good time. I'm gonna keep playing it for a while, just because like there's still more content and more stuff to explore. I haven't found everything in the main game yet. The story is insane, which is perfect for Resident Evil.
Right.
Storyline always has to be fucking bonkers, and they jump the shark like 3 times.
Oh, wow!
It's the best.
They've done the hat trick of jumping the shark.
God, yes, it's my favorite fucking thing because you like right away they go in the story. They always go with a really bold choice, like right away that sort of pins them into a corner, and then you see later on in the game where they're just kind of like, how do we address this? Like, how do we fix that thing we did at the very beginning that is going to kind of put us in a corner here now?
Huh. Very cool.
Yeah, but really, really well done. I'm really, really enjoying it. So, yeah, that's what's going on with me.
Cool. What's on the horizon as far as video games for you?
I downloaded Hades.
Yeah.
Because I want to do that.
Yeah.
Also, gonna beat Tiny Tina's Wonderland at some point here soon.
Sure.
Gonna be doing that. Also downloaded, we talked about it before, I think, that game Visage or Visage, Visage.
Visage.
Yeah, Visage.
Like face.
Yeah.
Like Michelle Visage.
Yes, there we go. Perfect. Perfectly done.
But I don't recall.
We've talked about it a little bit before. We've seen it on Game Pass.
Tell me more.
I don't know anything about it.
Oh.
I've seen clips of people playing it before on like Funhouse and stuff like that, and it looks very, very creepy and interesting. So I'm just kind of, and it's one of the few things like that I have gotten to go into where I know nothing about it. So I'm just kind of like, okay, this could be fun to do.
For sure.
And I've heard good things, so I'm just like, yeah. I just know you're in a house and there's like ghosts.
Okay,
that's all I know. That's all I know, and that's all I want to know because I want to play something that really scares the shit out of me again.
I've recently come into the knowledge of some multiplayer like scary games.
Yes, I saw you sent me a thing for a couple of
them. Yeah. We definitely need to get those on the show.
100%.
Because it's like, there's something about like a cult trying to resurrect a thing and you're trying to stop it.
Yes!
Or good stuff.
Well, Cody, fan of the show, has also mentioned before that like we should be doing some scary games on stream, and I'm like,
absolutely.
I mean, yes, but I don't know. I'm just like, am I ready to embarrass myself online like that?
Sure you
And then I remember the things I've said on this podcast, so it's just like, it's already out there. It doesn't matter anymore. Like, we're good. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Now that we've got all the pleasantries out of the way here, let's go ahead and jump into our sorry, it's really, really fucking weird just now. Did you feel that too?
Yeah, it was weird.
Just like a weird feeling of like deja vu.
Yeah, like
we've done this.
This before. Yeah. Like it's all happened before.
It's all happened before. Like we've sat here and talked about video games like we know what the fuck we're talking about. And we've done that like over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Weird. Anyway, so today we're talking about the game 12 Minutes.
That was so dumb.
Thank you for going with me on
I was there. Yeah.
I'm glad you were with me on that.
Yes, and.
Yeah, yes, and. even if you don't like it, yes, and.
Although in my heart it was more of a yes, but.
Yeah, yes, but.
Anyways.
So if you haven't picked up on on what we're doing with our theme here today, we're talking about the game 12 Minutes, which is in this game, you take on the role of the husband on a night that should be just a romantic evening with your wife, but the night turns into a nightmare when a police officer breaks into your home, accuses your wife of murder, and beats you to death. Only for you to find yourself immediately returned to the exact moment you opened the front door, stuck in a 12-minute loop, doomed to relive that same moment over and over and over and over again. So that's like the basic idea of what the game is. So unless you can figure out how to break yourself out of this cycle using puzzles and clues and stuff in the room and whatnot, you're pretty much doomed to be stuck in this moment forever. Mm-hmm. So the way that this game, because I told you about this, I think.
Yes.
I think I mentioned it to
you.
This got brought up ages ago. Like, this has kind of been in our back burner to maybe do an episode on for a while now. Mm-hmm. And the way it showed up for me was one of my buddies just texted me and said, 12 minutes on Game Pass, you should give it a shot. It's really, really fucking weird. And I was just like, okay, cool. And it's a friend that I trust. And so, again, I went in, no knowledge, no trailers, no research, anything like that, and just, like, jumped into it.
Yeah.
And was just, started off, went in, and was maybe sort of like, oh, okay, this is interesting, and started going through it. And then the police detective guy showed up, and I was like, odd. And then I did, in fact, get beat to death in the game.
Right.
And then it started over back at the beginning, and I was just like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay, this is kind of cool and intriguing. Yeah. I'm pretty fucking down for this, actually.
Yeah.
So I just think that, like, and we'll get into our thoughts at the ending eventually. We'll get there, because it might get a little bit, we're not going to harp on it too much, but it'll get a little negative on this one, unfortunately.
Well, so this is, okay, so when we started this show,
yes,
we knew that we wanted to keep a positive atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Because it's all too easy to, especially in the gaming community, to just, like, dunk on things and, like, say, oh, this is trash and blah, 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 and it's just, like, it can get really toxic really fast, right? Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have, like, unfavorable opinions or criticisms about video games, because we do,
We're not blindly talking positively about all video games. There are...
Correct.
You can't just ignore, like, certain faults.
And this will certainly not be the first time that we have a negative opinion that we've aired.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've always remained an air of positivity on the show. I've never once gone off the rails and just ranted about something I didn't like. That's never happened here.
Never.
We didn't have a full episode of us disagreeing on Bioshock Infinite. That didn't happen.
So we just want to preface this by saying, like, while we might have some criticisms about particularly the ending of this game, there are a lot of really great things about this game that we will talk about at length.
I think that's what I'll say. It's just kind of like 9 out of the 10 things about this game I really, really enjoyed.
Yes.
It's just, unfortunately, the 10th thing was the last chunk of the game.
Which is a category of things that is a big thing for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get into it. So let's start with how the game plays, yeah?
Yeah, it works pretty much like, if you've ever... If you're familiar with it, it works in sort of like a typical point-and-click adventure style of game, akin to like the Monkey Island games from back in the day or whatnot, or more modernly, a lot of the Telltale stuff, like the Walking Dead games and Wolf Among Us, as we both love.
Yes.
Sort of works in that vein as well, but it's a top-down point-and-click thing, where it's just like, go into your apartment, there's set number of items and locations you can interact with, and then you just sort of... it does a thing kind of what we talked about earlier, where the game just kind of dumps you in and says, go figure it out. Like, there's really not... There's no, like, tutorial to it. There's no like, explanation for, like...
No.
You go... Everything sort of context clues is, like, you go in, like, you walk in, your wife walks up to you, greets you happily, gives you a kiss, says dinner will be ready soon, so you kind of get to go, like... Okay, this is my wife, this is more likely my home, and this is the relationship here and whatnot.
Sure.
And it starts pretty low-key and standard, where it's just, like, dinner with your partner, and just, like, she's got something she's really excited to tell you, and then just, like, either... I don't remember how it went the first time I did it, but, like, either before or after the reveal of just, like, we're having a baby happens, it's when there's a knock on your door, and it's a cop that comes into your house, handcuffs you both, and beats you asking your wife about something.
Right.
And then just like you die and then the cycle starts over from there. Mm-hmm. So you are stuck in this loop. And that's what I meant at the beginning in the intro when I was kind of like, what if the escape room, the goal was to break that time loop?
Right.
Which is the basic idea here. And on that, the game delivers wonderfully.
Yes.
In terms of that being the component that
beautiful.
Drives the game, I think it's fucking wonderful.
Right.
In doing my research for this, I kind of found out that the game director, Louis Antonio, I'm hoping I didn't just butcher that. I know it's very simple, but like anything outside of English for me, I do a terrible fucking job.
Louis, or it might be Louis.
That's what I was wanting. That's why I couldn't get it. He was, I don't remember where he came from, but he was a game designer with another company that split off on his own to work on this game. And this was the first project that he did by himself.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and he talks about in interviews and stuff, he was like, I was really just kind of working with it from the ground up. I had the idea of a guy walking to an apartment, being stuck in the loop, and like story just sort of developed as I branched off from there. Mm-hmm. Which I was like, that's kind of cool, because this is not the game that I would have thought would have been gameplay driven as opposed to story driven. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this to me speaks in a world that is like story idea turned into a video game. Right. But it was actually like game mechanics and then the story developed through that.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense though if you think about it, because coming up with a story like that wherein little bits of information are revealed and pieced together, and then like, you know, you take the information that you learned over here and then you apply it to this other branching like timeline, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so it kind of makes sense to see it from the gameplay driven aspect too.
True. That
I can see it both ways, you know?
Yeah.
Because the story is very important to what's happening and what you're trying to discover in the game.
Yeah. And just, well, the other thing too that I like about it, at least in the design of it, that we've talked about this before, just like I love games that encourage like exploration.
Yeah.
Just like
and experimentation.
And just like I made a mistake out the gate because I got a little bit too curious right away, because I was just like point and click, run around and look for everything, and I pissed my wife off a little bit in the first loop because I found the baby clothes right away.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, you fucked up the surprise, so congrats, I guess. And I was like,
oh, no.
Didn't. But that's also part of the thing too, is that like, because then it leads to a moment later on where if you start to put pieces together, one of the endings you can unlock, because there's multiple endings to the game, but the reason why I'm using quotation marks here for those who can't see me, I'm doing quotations around endings because it's, even if you unlock a certain ending for the game, there's one that is the one that is like, no, this is how you complete the game, and that's the one that gets you out of the loop eventually in the game, which is, should we hold on for you to talk about it? Because you were the one that actually beat the game. So
Yeah,
because I got frustrated and I was just like, I can't get this last, apparently like 5-minute moment fucking figured out.
Right, yeah.
Which pissed me off a little bit, but that was more just an ineptitude on my end. So, but within that too was what's interesting in that, like, in the way of like most of the time in which the encouragement for exploration is like a really fun, like, oh, what's over here? What can you find in here? What's happening here? It instigates a lot of really dark moments in the game as well for trying to put pieces together. Like something that I thought was really, really interesting, but just kind of left me feeling a little dirty afterwards, was just like, in order to figure out, though the whole thing is that like this cop that comes in, who's not really a cop, he's looking for a pocket watch.
No, he is a cop.
He's not a cop.
I thought he was.
I think he's a fake cop.
Oh.
That was what I put together, because he's related to, just light spoilers, he was related to your wife's, he was a friend of your wife's father.
Yeah.
So I think he's putting on the cop thing as like a fake. Like
I thought he just was a cop.
Oh,
cops can't have friends.
I'm just saying, based on like what it seems like your wife's father was kind of involved in. It seems like he was in a bit more of a sketchy business. And like pretending that he was a cop could be.
If it was a sketchy business, maybe that's even more reason for him to actually be a cop.
You're not incorrect. You know what? Maybe I watched a guy. Maybe that's like my fucking privilege there. Is that like I saw a dude break into a house, claim he was a cop, do a bunch of fucked up shit, and went, well, the cop would never do any of that stuff.
Oh.
No. A cop would never break into an apartment with a vendetta and murder 2 people. No cop has ever done anything like that. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I full thought that he was a real cop.
I think you're right. But in order to figure out, at least the way that I determined, I don't know if you found a different path, was to figure out the location of where she was hiding the pocket watch, was the moment I walked in, before my wife realized I was there, I hid in the closet and watched this dude handcuff, beat my wife until she told him where the watch was. And then he also killed her, and I just had to walk out and try to leave in order to reset the timer again.
Yeah.
Which was just like, oh my god, like, what the fuck?
Rough.
Which is
rough.
Yeah, again, especially with the two of us, with like how invested we get in the story and the characters in the game.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't help that everyone is voiced by people that I like in this game.
Yeah.
The cast is bonkers.
Like, 5-star cast, absolutely.
James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley,
and
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, I was psyched. Once again, love all those actors, but I was just like, what are you guys doing here?
Yeah. How did that call happen? Like,
I want to know. I really do want to know, like, how that, like, I mean, I'm sure it had to do something with, like, the development team, because, like, working on stuff with my roommate Jess and, like, some projects that are kind of in the works right now, knowing that part of the way you get funding for certain things is if you could get certain talent involved.
Right.
So I'm sure that was part of it, of being like, if I could get a couple of really, like, good actors that people know, people will go, you've got who working on your project? Yeah, here's some money. Go make your fucking thing. Sure. Like, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, just kind of being forced to make these really, really twisted, dark decisions was interesting and really cool, and I'm about it, but I also hated it at the same time.
I get you. Especially because there's, like, a couple of loops where to get to the end, you have to, like, kind of really hurt the guy that's coming in, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing too, was like, you also kind of have to torture him a little bit at one point to get like some more information out.
And it's weird, there's a sort of rationalization that happens both, I think, for the player and for the character in the game, because there's a knowledge of, like, this is just going to reset, and it's like, it's going to be as if none of this ever happened, you know, which is like, ooh, you know, like a little,
which is something that, like, Luis Antonio talks about too, was that, like, he kind of wanted to incorporate that in the dialogue a little bit too, of just like, not necessarily like different dialogue altogether, but like doing different takes of, like, what the actors were doing depending on the path that you went down. So, like, if it seemed like the implication I got was, like, if it seemed like players were more hesitant to do something like that, the dialogue would sound a little differently. But if you were just like, yeah, bing, bang, boom, let's get through, kill him, shoot him, torture this guy, da-da-da-da. As you moved along, the main character, the husband, would sort of become a little bit more numb to the situation as you went down certain pathways and whatnot, which I was like, that's a really interesting touch.
Cool.
Because I catch that too. Like, if I started, like, just trying to click through dialogue to go through it as fast as I could, he would start interjecting and be like, not now, leave me alone, no, I gotta do this, and just, like, be, like, really short and curt in certain moments. Which I was like, that's a cool touch.
Yeah, I agree.
So again, there's all these, like, interesting, weird little pathways that you kind of start to go down that make it really, really interesting. And again, it's like, it's the consequence of exploration. Like, in one moment that I had, I don't know if you had this, my thought process, so you could pick up a knife, just like a kitchen knife, and my thought process was tell my wife what the fuck is going on, convince her what's going on, hand her the knife and say, hold on to this, so when the guy zip ties you, you can cut your way out of it. But I went, hey honey, come here for a second. My wife walked over to me and I just stabbed her in the stomach.
Yeah.
I was like, that wasn't my intent. That was not what I was going for at all.
Yeah. It's wild that that's even an option. Because you don't get anything out of it. It doesn't do anything
for you at all. Other than the knowledge of, okay, can't do that, I guess.
Right.
I'm like, that's it.
No.
You're just gonna, and what's mean about it too is that, like, it didn't just automatically reset the cycle.
Nope.
I just had to sit there for a minute, and I was in such shock that, like, the cop showed up while I was just standing there, and he kicked in the door, and he was like, "What the fuck?"
You can also, I think there's I think you can, like, stab the wife and then, like, hide in the closet, and then, like, he'll walk in, and see the body, and I think maybe he, like, still searches the apartment because he's looking for the watch.
He's looking for the watch.
And he'll probably find you and like pull you out of the closet. I think that's an option too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not good either way.
If the wife like isn't in play either by that or by like another means, like you could slip pills into her coffee and knock her out too so she goes and lies down.
Right. Which you have to do to electrocute him.
Yeah, because I do love the fun little plants they do, like walking in and flipping on the light switch the first time and seeing it like go zap and shock.
Yeah.
To which also the first time I did that, I did it and then I was like, I wonder what happens. And I clicked it again and turned it on and I died.
Yep.
Just immediately. Just shocked me to death and I died. That was also how I accidentally killed the wife one time too.
Yep. Oh, we all did that.
Because I went to go... all been there. I went to go set it up like that. And so I went click and turned it off. And just on a random cycle, she walked into the room and clicked it on and it zapped her and she fucking died on me. And I was just like... fucking god damn it. So it is one of those things like it's fun but very frustrating in like those puzzle mechanic games where it's just like, well, it's a weird thing too because like I often find the satisfying thing of a puzzle game is being able to go, okay, I figured out all the pieces, I know what the solution is, and then putting everything together and then getting the satisfaction of going like, oh, I was right, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
This game kind of takes that away from you. Mm. And I mean that. I don't mean that as a criticism. I think it was a little intentional, where it was just sort of like, because as you go through, like to sort of explain, I'll explain it with like one of the endings you get for the game. Mm-hmm. There's I think it's like a quiet night in is like the achievement you get for the ending and whatnot.
Something like that. The perfect day.
Yeah, the perfect day or something.
Yeah.
Basically, you can call the cop's daughter, and through knowledge you've gained through other loops, convince her to call him to tell him not to come to the apartment and let it go.
Right.
And then you could play the evening out, even though you know everything that's going on, play it out like it was originally planned with the surprise of the baby and like you and your wife have... It's a really, really cute moment, actually, that I was just like, can this please just be the end of the game? Can we just let this be it? Because this is very, very sweet and cute, and I like this. Can we just have this be over after this is done? And just like, you start kissing in the kitchen, and then you go into the bedroom, and it's very cute, and you guys fall in the bed, and then it restarts the cycle on you. And it's just that moment of just being like, please let this be it. Please let this be it. Please let this be it. God fucking damn it, really?
Right.
And just having that pulled away from you was like something as someone who aspires to be a writer and an artist is both gratifying in a way where I'm like, ooh, well done. But also, fuck you. As a player, I'm like, you go to hell. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking about endings. Are we there?
We could go ahead and just like get into it. We could get into it.
I have opinions about the ending of this game.
Me too. It's a bit of a bummer. And
it's a
bit of a bummer.
It's really a bit of a bummer because and
I want to say for myself personally, I will say this: I am not against an unsatisfying ending. Like there's a way to go about it where you could do it and it works well within certain mediums, but something like it's a different medium, but like a movie like The Lighthouse, if you haven't seen it, it does not have a satisfying ending to it, but it's intentional and I really, really enjoy it. So like stuff like a lot of horror movies fall into the category of not necessarily having like a satisfying ending to them. Think like a Hereditary or something like that. That's not a satisfying. You haven't seen that one? Okay, sorry.
Sorry. I'm bad at movies.
You're fine. But
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Like you can have like an unsatisfying ending, and like that can be the point. Is like there's not always a satisfying ending, right? I get it.
Yeah. Whereas like with this, it kind of feels like, and again, credit knowing what like the process was for him, just like figuring out as you went along. It kind of feels like the unsatisfying ending was sort of something that he kind of stumbled himself into, and that was kind of the result.
Yeah. The thing with this game is that there are multiple endings. I didn't reach all of them.
Yeah, same.
So maybe there's one out there that is like more satisfying than the ones I did come across.
So there are multiple like endings, like proper.
Well, okay. So here, thank you. You've led me right into gripe number 1.
Okay.
The endings are a little unclear.
Yes!
Because, so, like, there's achievements that you can get, like the perfect day.
Yeah, like that said us, like, unlock this ending of the game.
Right. But it like, you continue the loop.
Yeah.
So it's not an ending. So it's, like, vague. So as a player, I'm like, that felt like, kind of like the end.
Yeah.
Because I got the cop to go away, we had a nice night, everything was fine.
Yeah.
That feels like an end.
Yeah.
Feels like an ending. And I got an achievement for it. but you're still stuck in the loop.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so I didn't get an ending, and I don't like the ambiguity. You know? Because there's a couple like that. There's that one, and then there's a really, really bad one where you electrocute the cop, and then he passes out, you tie him up, and then you decide to let him go, and then...
Oh, really?
Oh.
I haven't seen that, okay.
And then you, like, get talking, and if you act like, you know, like a coward, basically, he can convince you to, like, go sit out on the couch. He closes the door, he takes the wife out, comes back out, and he says, all right, we're square.
Oh my
I'm
God.
leaving. And that's the coward ending.
Oh my God. That is
brutal. Bad.
I had wondered, actually, though, if that option was there, because there is, like, a point where it's like, as you figure out what's going on, and your character starts to put together pieces of, like, did my wife fucking murder her her dad?
Father, yeah.
Like, I could see the direction in which that like, the character would sort of be like, oh, my wife's a murderer. Like, yeah, I don't want to be involved in this shit. Like, yeah. Although, with, like, what is the ultimate reveal at the end of the game, it especially makes that really fucked up.
Yes! Yes! Because any opinion of, like, oh, I don't want to be involved with my wife if she's a murderer is completely debunked by the fact, and we're getting into it, spoilers ahead.
Big spoilers. This is like the crux of what the ending of the game is, no matter what direction you go in.
Exactly. But the big thing is that you find out over multiple loops, you put the pieces together, and you realize that the wife didn't kill her father, because there's a picture that was taken, and she was, you know, miles away when on the day he actually died.
Yeah.
So, and then you find out, that there was a half-brother. She had a half-brother, and that was part of the reason that things weren't great at home. And it was a love child that the father had with the nanny.
Yes.
And you find that out. So then the husband starts, like, working through loops and starting to put pieces together. And you find out the name of the nanny. The nanny's name is Dahlia, and the way you find that out is that the name Dahlia is on the baby clothes.
Yeah.
So you show it to the cop, and he's like, oh yeah, that was the name of the nanny. And then it gets revealed.
For everybody that it's like, oh!
Yeah. And then it's revealed that the husband is the half-brother love child, and that he was the one that killed the father a week later after his half-sister future wife just this is where as a writer, again, no offense to the guy, you made an awesome game, and you've done more than I've ever done as a writer in my entire fucking career. However, this is the point where as a writer was like, you get to what you just said, you should go, I've done too much. Yeah. I think we've lost the plot.
I need to take a step back. We need to reevaluate here for a minute, and we need to figure this out.
Right. So then everything clicks, and you realize that the husband is the half-brother and actually killed the father a week later from when half-sister future wife shot him and bounced. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So the big reveal happens, and so you think, oh, at first that's kind of like, oh, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, we were together and we didn't know, and, like, you know, whatever. But then you go through a couple more loops, and then you get to the point where it actually bounces you back in time to a conversation between the father and the husband.
Which was also something that kind of took me out mechanically, too, because it was like, one of the cool things here is that we haven't gone to any other location, but now we're flashing to a different location. I was just like...
I agree.
I get for sort of the thinly veiled exposition dump you need to do here. Mm-hmm. It needed to kind of work there, but I was just like, there could have been a better way to do this.
I agree. And then I also didn't like that the father was also voiced by Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, that was a little bit of an odd choice. That was sort of like that was like something we would have done for a play at Crafton at our community college.
Right.
Because we were just like, we don't fucking have anybody else. So you gotta fill in for this part real quick.
I was really confused why there couldn't have been somebody else.
Yeah.
Just somebody else.
Especially knowing that there isn't a reveal that, like, oh no, dad still isn't dead, and this is actually dad, or something like that.
Well, and that's what I mean? At first I was like, wait, is that the cop? And then I said, no, it's not the cop. And then I said, wait, so is the father the cop? You know, and I was doing too many mental acrobatics to actually pay attention to the scene that was happening in front of me.
Which also, by the way, they did hire a separate actor to play the daughter of the cop you're talking on the phone with. And could have hired someone else to play the dad.
And the 911 operator.
Yes!
Yeah.
One more casting.
Exactly, I agree. So I didn't quite understand, and it took me out of that in that moment, which is supposed to be a cool moment because it's like, oh, we're in a different location. Oh, this is in the past. Oh, this is a conversation that But then we get to the point.
That's great for audio. It's Brendan slapping my arm. Just to clarify for your listeners, he's slapping my arm. Nothing else is happening right there.
Bad video games just get me so.
Oh God! Stop it!
You get to this conversation between the son and the father.
Yeah, let's just move on. Anyway,
and the father is trying to convince him to like leave the daughter alone, and so then you're faced with, oh wait, so the half brother was knew and pursued.
Yeah.
His half-sister future wife.
Which is like, it's I kind of love it though, because it's a bold choice to say, here, not the choice of incest. Like,
okay.
Follow my track here. It's a bold choice to spend an entire game making you feel connected to this especially the medium of video game in which, like, naturally, through the character you're controlling, you feel that connection to it as well. Because there's another game that kind of does this mechanic a little bit better that we'll need to play. It's called Spec Ops: The Line, which sounds like generic third-person shooter. Kind of is, but the story for it is incredible. So we'll need to check that one out at some point. But it's just like, it's an interesting move to make you feel this connection and a certain level of empathy and sympathy for this character, to just sort of pull that all away from you at the end and go like, nope, turns out this is all your fault.
Right. And then that is vague as well, because it's like, so did he like have like a mental break and forgot all of this and then just went on? Because this is like, it's played as it's like revolutionary to the husband too.
Yeah, that he didn't realize.
He's like, oh, I remember now, and it's like, okay, so,
and it's like the whole like amnesia cop out and something like this, like it's been done in the whodunit world before, and it's always like, oh God, man, because it's like, this could have been, and I think again this kind of goes with like story influencing gameplay versus gameplay influencing story and whatnot, that if they had started with story first, essentially what you have here is a modern retelling of Oedipus. Like, when you really break it down, like it's not mother and son, but it's that.
Yeah, except,
you know what I mean? It's a little.
Except the Oracle never told Oedipus, hey, that's actually her mom. And Oedipus wasn't like, oh, cool, I'll still do that.
But that's what I mean, though. Just like, that would have been something that, like, if
and then,
you
and
had,
then he
like,
shoots the Oracle.
Right. But that's what I mean. Just kind of like, if you have the ability, I think if they had the ability to sort of scope back a little bit and start with story and go like, okay, here's where I eventually want this to go. What are the pathways to lead there? Whereas, like, again, based on the interviews that I read and whatnot, my assumption is that he started at, walks into apartment, cop shows up, is looking for something, beats you to death, start the cycle over again. And again, considering how this game turned out, I still applaud it for being able to do it as well as it did. Like, I can't just, like, all the complaints I have about the ending, I'm still like, fucking well done, sir. Like, and that is bold choice to make for your first time being like solo developer, or not solo developer, but like working on a game by yourself and making it work through like da-da-da-da. So I'm like,
the thing is, here's the thing. Here's the thing. In unsatisfying endings, if the unsatisfying ending had been like, they discover that they are half siblings and oh my God, she's carrying his child.
Right.
And like, that was the ending. Okay, that's an unsatisfying ending, but at least the main guy wasn't a piece of shit. Like,
yeah, you could have had to where it was like, he didn't, the whole time growing up, he didn't know that this was his sister. Yeah. And that just like in this moment at the end, that's when he connects that dot.
Yeah, everything.
And like,
right.
you could still have him be ultimately the murderer of the father, But it could still be a thing where it's kind of like, he just thought the father was just being an overprotective dickhead. You know what I mean? Like, and go in that direction. And then the actual relation with each other could be the big reveal for the ending of the game. Yeah. And that's kind of what makes you go like, fuck, okay, what do we do now? Like,
yeah. I also didn't like that the timbre of the conversation between him and the father wasn't like the father going, "You sick fucko, get away from my daughter."
Yeah,
what
no, we're not doing this. No, we're absolutely not.
Like, absolutely. It was kind of more or less like a negotiation, and I didn't care for that.
Which I think was sort of like, because like the father is not presented in a great light in this game.
Absolutely not.
By anybody other than the cop.
No,
who is a shady motherfucker, so if he likes him, that's not a good sign.
No.
But I read that, I personally read that as being like, he didn't actually really care about the daughter. He just knew that this was going to be a bad thing overall for him. Oh, so he was just sort of trying to brush it under the rug and like get rid of it. Like, listen, you're going to stop talking to her, you're going to stop seeing her.
Yeah, okay.
Because this is going to be bad for me down the road.
Got it.
If people find out I have two blood-related kids that are doing each other, like, that's going to look bad on me.
And you know, it was bad for him.
It was really was bad for him. I think it's specifically the choice of the half-brother being like, no, I love her and I don't care if we're related. It's like, I struggle to have sympathy with you in this moment, sir.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what really like killed it at the end for me.
Yeah.
I got to the end and like the reveal happened, you know, with like the oh my god, we're half siblings, and I was like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, but then it kept going, so I was like, okay, what more are we gonna find out? And then the something more was, oh, and he knew the whole time and did it anyway. And then I was just like,
yeah. If maybe, it's just like, maybe there could have been something to you where just like dropping nuggets that like the character you're playing also isn't the best of guys.
Dropping nuggets. Sorry.
Leaving clues in the storytelling. Is that better?
Yes.
I'm on a show with a child, ladies and gentlemen. This is who I'm working with.
Like you wouldn't have laughed if I had said dropping nuggets.
I don't know what you're talking about. Once again, I have never had a moment breaking in my professionalism.
Never an unprofessional moment in your
Never
life.
made an inappropriate joke. Never alluded to childish humor once. Has never, ever happened before.
I can't stand you. Wrap this puppy up.
Oh, we'll wrap it up. Jesus Christ, fine. Ultimately, for me, sort of like what it comes to at the end for me is that like this is. I feel like this would be a little similar to our BioShock Infinite episode where it's just kind of like the ending doesn't totally break the game for me. Like I don't really have. Well, maybe it does because I don't have a powerful urge to go back and replay it or try things differently and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if this was necessarily intended to be like a multi-time like play game because it seems like it's pretty straightforward as far as like go down this path. Ultimately, this is what you're going towards, and then there you go. Pretty much like as far as the ending goes. But like again, I will always like we talked about it before. Just kind of like I will always be more in favor of something that is maybe messy, a little clunky in moments, but like is trying to do something different with the genre.
Absolutely, and that's why I think it's a great game.
As a game, it works great. It does work great.
Gameplay is great. The mechanics are great. You know, like exploring the very limited area that you have and finding actually a lot. It's like very robust what you can find and do in the space. You know, and learning. Oh, I can like put like I can put the pills in the coffee mug, and then I can fill the coffee mug with water, and then I can give it to my wife, and then she'll go lay down and go to sleep. You know, so that I can have the apartment to myself. You know, so it's
and everything does feel like it's working towards a goal. Like nothing feels like there's like nothing that's like. Oh, well, that turned out to be nothing or useless or da-da-da-da. Like, everything sort of is working towards a singular goal.
Yeah.
So, in that end, I appreciate it. But, it's just, when you get through the whole thing, and then everything kind of clunkily sort of, doesn't fall apart, but just like, I guess more sort of clunkily comes together at the end. Yeah. It's just like part of, especially with like, because this is sort of in the vein of like a whodunit, where it's like you're putting the pieces together of like what's happening here.
Yeah.
So, and the best things about whodunits is always the last moment of like.
Exactly.
Of like, you know, like the Sherlock Holmes or the Hercule Poirot.
Exactly.
Like going, okay, so here is how all the pieces fit together.
It's the I bet you're wondering why I gathered you all here scene.
Pretty much. Yeah. Just like, you know, again, just like, Murder on the Orient Express, Knives Out, like a bunch of stuff are great examples of how this works really, really, really fucking well.
Yeah.
On this one, and I think it's an extra challenge too of doing that, but doing it in a way that is like unsatisfying is a complex goal to I don't even know if that was the intention, but like a very hard way to go for that too. Because ultimately that moment should sort of feel like, even if it is bleak, like something like when we just watched Death on the Nile. Because that wasn't like satisfying. Like it was like, it was just sort of like, oh God, that's what happened. But if that's what you're going for, it should be more like, oh Jesus, so that's what it was the whole time. That's what was going on here the whole time. Oh my God, can't believe I missed all that. You know what I mean? Whereas like, I think that's what they were going for here, but it's just because they were putting together as they were developing the game, certain aspects of the story kind of fell through a little bit.
No, I mean, for me, it's just really that just one tiny detail that got added at the end is just the husband knowing that it was his half sister. I think that really kills it.
It's just a hard turn for making us want to connect with this guy.
If everything else was the same and that detail was removed, I think it would be like great. You know? Because then it becomes a very like he becomes a hero at the end because he says, oh my God, I had no idea. This is all my fault. I confess everything. And then he confesses to the cop, and then he gives him the pocket watch so that he can save his daughter.
Yeah.
And then he gets out of the wife's life because they're half siblings. Great. He did the right thing.
I was going to say, or I think something that would be cool, just hit me, something that would actually be cool for that is you have that whole thing, he gives the watch back to the cop, and then just like the last moments of the game is just you and the wife sitting in the living room together, sort of like a, like, I think the last moment that would be cool would be like, okay, so which one of us is going to go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that should be just like, do you make the decision or do you let her make the choice? And again, I just like, I hate it when we talk about shit like this because it's just like, I'm not trying to say that like, we would have done it better. Hindsight's 2020. You know what I mean? And like, I've never put together a video game. So just like, again, it's just like, this podcast reaches fucking nobody, but this happens to reach the director and the writer of this game. We are not trying to shit talk you right now. I promise that's not the intent of this thing. I just want to make that like, just like, I've never put together a whole game by myself. I've barely put together a whole fucking script by myself at this point in my life. So it's like, the complexities of making it all work, I'm sure by the end of it, he was kind of like, this makes sense. Okay, like, this tracks, I can follow this. Yeah. I've been working on this for, like, I think he said he worked on it for, like, 5 years or something like that. So it's just like, okay, into 5 years, you're like, I have a coherent game that makes sense. I'm good. Yeah. And not even, like, dismissively, just kind of like, I'm happy with the product that I have made.
Sure.
I get you on that.
Yeah.
Just... It could be a medium thing too, because I think for the most part, people assume with a video game, it's like you start with the game mechanics and then you move into and then you get the story that surrounds your game mechanics. Whereas like 9 times out of 10, that works with like certain mechanics where it's like a first-person shooter or a survival horror or something like that. You typically you kind of go like, okay, here's the mechanics and how people are going to play the game, and here's a story that's going to surround that and whatnot. 9 times out of 10, it works great. With something like this, with a puzzle mechanic that is about revealing what is happening in these people's lives, I just think story should have been priority first, and then you move into mechanics. Especially when your mechanic is very, very simple, like a point and click.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're not reinventing it. It's a very well done point and click.
Absolutely.
Crazy well done point and click.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes those games do drive me fucking insane.
Yeah.
In terms of just kind of like, well, why can't I pick up the cup? Let me pick up the cup. I can do things with the cup. Let me do it. It really did let you explore a lot of options without feeling like you were totally wasting your time in certain moments. Mm-hmm. But it's just, again, it's just like, I think moving forward, if there's something to kind of wrap all this up, I think that like for video games, you should always, no matter what your intent is, whether it's something like this that is going to be heavily story driven, or something basic like a Doom game that is just about shooting demons on Mars, which is the plot of Doom. Like, you should always keep in mind that like, especially now with video games, we are looking for something of a solid, put together ending.
Right.
And so that should always be kept in mind, especially with something like this.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're making me invested in these people's lives. Like, you're forcing that on me. Like, you have to keep in mind, it's kind of like, I am in a different level of connection with this character because it's a video game than if you had made this a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like...
Oh, God, I think this would be a good movie, though.
It would have been a solid flick. It would have been a cool flick.
Yeah.
I wonder how the mechanic would have worked of like restarting of just like, or if that like, in a game, it's a mechanic, whereas in a movie, I feel like at a certain point, it just becomes a gimmick and it gets annoying.
Oh, maybe.
You know what I mean? Possibly. Which is where I think that works better in this medium. Like, if I saw this movie, I think I would have gone, cool idea, better as a game. Basically, what we're saying is that we're not going to be happy no matter what.
Yeah!
It's the crux of what we're getting to here. No, overall, again, it's like I said at the beginning, it's kind of like 9 out of 10 things in this game are pretty much fucking flawless for what the game was trying to do. It's just, again, it's just that one thing is like, for us anyway, because we're story-driven people, just like that one thing was like the really important part of the game, and that was the ending, which does like, it's unsatisfying, and not in a way that like you would hope it would be unsatisfying. You know what I mean?
I would go so far as to say disappointing.
A little disappointing.
You know, because there's satisfying, there's unsatisfying, and then there's disappointing.
Yeah, and then because there's just sort of like, oh, so we're done here, I guess.
Yeah, I literally I put the controller down and I was just like, I don't even care anymore. Like, yeah,
I think that's the worst thing to get to, is the point of where just like your player is just like, I don't fucking care anymore. Like, to pull in another example real quick as we wrap this up, there's a game that came out ages and ages ago when I was still in high school. So you know, back when we were using horse and buggies and shit like that. Had to crank up your Xbox with Steam.
Cranked it with Steam.
Cranked it with Steam. That made sense. Anyway, point being, that like there was a game that came out called WET. It was WT, which was like which was supposed to be like, it's an acronym for something. I don't remember what, but it's an acronym for like a certain like subset of like hitman, like assassination, like groups and whatnot. And it was a really, really fun game with some cool mechanics where it was like introducing the idea of like bullet time and like being able to slow down time in the game and shooting multiple targets, because like your character had 2 guns and you could like do a hard lock onto one set of targets, but then your other one you could free aim and shoot other people while you're like doing flips in the air and shit like that's like really, really cool stuff.
Neat.
And it's all like vaguely Tarantino Grindhouse-esque in terms of like the storyline and whatnot goes. But you get to the end and you get to your last boss fight and it's like a 3-button QTE. Oh. And you're just kind of like, what the fuck? No, you gave me all these cool game mechanics. You're going to give me this bullshit at the end? No, fuck you. Like that's just completely took me out of it and ruined the rest of the experience for me, which was a solid gaming experience, honestly. But then just like, and I find that similar to this, where it's kind of like get through all of that, and then you just kind of go like, oh, that's where we're at now? This is where we're done? Really?
So you'd go so far as to say that like a bad final boss can ruin a game?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these are the only 2 examples I can think of in terms of doing something like that goes.
The only 2?
Because again, just like it's all about intent. So like, you know, just like the intent of some games is maybe you get to the final boss and you realize it's like, oh, they're not actually the villain. Turns out you were kind of the villain the whole time, and you have to go into an explanation to explain the complexities of like the time loop and whatnot, and you know, like, and it's all a metaphor for your faith and how you use all that shit. Not talking about anything in particular here, just saying that like sometimes something can kind of take a different direction and whatnot. It's a much more complex story, so you take some time at the end to make sure it all gets explained. And should Garrett just fade out? Is that how we did in the episode? It's just him fading out and just going off.
We still gotta close.
No, I know.
It just trails off. More arguing about fucking Bioshock Infinite. I'm sorry. You walk into you walk into my argument every time.
I know what I was doing. I know what I was doing for sure. I knew it was gonna happen in this episode in particular. I knew it was gonna fucking happen again. 100%. I knew what was going on.
Let's wrap this up.
Okay. Thank you for listening to our episode on 12 Minutes. What did you think of the game? Did you find anything to be satisfying, or are you kind of left wanting more like us? Let us know.
And as always, if you have any ideas for future discussions, games, topics that we can cover on the show, you can send an email to 3vopodcastteam@gmail.com, and you can give us your ideas. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at 3VO Podcast. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to our show. It really makes a difference, and we'll see you next time. Bye.